I've got it. All right. So I tell you what, Nick, I'm going to put you right here, okay, and Dorothy, we're going to put you right there. Okay. Now, do you go by Dorothy or do you go by Dottie?
Either.
Either? Okay. My grandmother was Dottie, and so I'll go with Dorothy, and everybody called her Dottie. So
I get Dot, Doris, Dottie.
All right. So
anything nice.
Dottie, you're over
So
here.
all these 3 pages or 4 pages. I thought, my goodness.
The only one that you really should pay attention to is,
It's not in it.
there it is,
Yeah.
that one, because I designed that one.
Oh, I read that.
So I should sign it for you. You should take it home. No, I'm just
There you
kidding.
go.
Okay.
This is the one I read to him.
Well, these are the ones that we're going to focus on a little bit today. But first and foremost, no problem finding us today. It was pretty simple. Traffic improved. Traffic was pretty nasty for a lot of my patients earlier in the afternoon.
Well, this was always traffic.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
that's always
bad,
traffic on the road. That's true.
bad.
All right, now the other thing I want to do is take a shot at your guys' last name, because I want to be able to say it. So I want to put the first O as the hard O.
K-O.
Yeah.
L-O.
Colocuris?
Correct.
That was good.
Is that pretty close?
Yeah.
Colocuris?
That's what it is.
Really? Look at me go.
I
All
say-
right.
I say Colocuris, and he says Colocuris.
Colocuris, but it's Colocuris.
Well,
Okay.
perhaps in Greek.
What is the origin of? Oh, I was about to say, is it
Greek.
Greek? Okay. All right. Well, I love family history, so it's when I find names that I'm unfamiliar with, I like to know where they came from. So there we go. All right. Well, I guess the biggest question before we get too involved in things is really, what was it that encouraged you kids to come in and see me today, especially at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
Well,
First of all, we're both retired.
Okay.
So,
And time doesn't matter.
That answers everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I noticed a decrease in his hearing.
Okay.
And over a year ago, when my mind checked,
Okay.
they thought I had a slight hearing loss in the one ear. But it's ironic because prior to that, I went for a hearing test, and that was several years back. And they put down that, you know, I have some hearing loss, and we had gone to another. Was that same day? Was it? I think it was Sears offered it. Okay, so I'm going to go in there and have a check. And so went in there, and we were talking like this, and I said, "Oh, I hear."
Now, I like to take a lot of notes because I like to have a good, clear picture. So if I'm looking down, it's not because I'm not paying attention, okay? But the patient doesn't notice, okay? Now, Nick, this is your opportunity to throw her under the bus a little.
That's okay. You can be.
No, and in all truthfulness, the reason I asked you, Nick, is, and I'm going to do the same thing when it's your turn, okay, is because hearing loss is I've chosen the word, well, it's pervasive, hearing loss is insidious. That's the word I've come up with to describe hearing loss, because we are generally the last people to know that we've got a problem, okay? And so I ask folks that come with you because they see it, and they notice it sometimes more than we do. And so that's why I ask, not so much to get you in trouble, but more because
Everyone says something I want to hear.
right.
Selective hearing.
Hey, you know, selective hearing is a real problem that I think afflicts more males than females. So
You're right.
that's my personal opinion.
We females can multitask. We can listen plus do other things.
Yeah, that's right. She's okay. All right. So let's come over here to you, Nick. Now, you did put down a check mark next to the yes. Okay. So I have a sneaking suspicion that Dorothy called in to have herself tested, but partially to get you to come in and
She said both of us.
yeah. Well,
Right.
I think they put it down, but they put her down as the primary contact with you as a, hey, we'll test you if we have time.
Well, she dragged me over, put it this way.
Okay. Well, there you have it. So you know,
dinner out, right?
let's focus on you, Nick, for a little bit. What do you notice as you know? What are you noticing about your hearing?
lately, I always, go like this sometimes,
Okay.
just to, like there's a like that or like an H or something like that.
Okay.
So I don't know what it is.
Okay. So lately it's kind of been coming and going out of that ear. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah.
Lately, patient feels it comes and goes. Now, what do you notice you struggle with more in particular? Is there types of sounds or voices or environments where you find that you're not hearing quite as well as you think you ought to?
No, I can hear the even the sliced, on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear very, very sliced, very. They can have, noise.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, but like I said, the only thing is just the left, right ear. That's all.
Here as well. Okay. Otherwise, okay. Now let's come back to again to you, Dottie. What do you notice about his hearing that has you concerned enough to want him to be tested in particular?
Well, sometimes I talk to him and like I say, is it selective hearing? Or is he engrossed in what he's doing that he doesn't keep doing that? But,
Okay.
that, you have, see, I feel as though if you are having a hearing issue, it's better to do something about it and stimulate the nerve
Okay.
rather than have it get
Right, yeah.
deteriorate more.
Very, very astute. And we're going to talk about that. And what you bring up is a very good point. And that is we do not hear with our ears. Okay? We hear with our brains. And we're going to get into much greater detail about that here in just a little bit. But what's important is we want to make sure that we're getting all of that information to the brain. And there's a lot of long-term, really short and long-term consequences as to why and so forth. So we're going to get into that. Now, kind of bouncing back and forth here, Dorothy, you're certainly doing well all the way across the board. You did put occasionally with some ringing in the ears.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that just comes and goes. It's very short in duration and doesn't really keep you up at night or is not invasive or anything. Okay. You do have a family of history of hearing loss. Who was in your family there?
My mom.
Okay. All right.
Your other sister, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And coming over here to you, Nick, again, there's, yes, for the tinnitus or tinnitus, again, it doesn't keep you up at night. It's just kind of comes and goes.
No, the only one thing it's, I have noticed the last couple of years, a noise.
Okay.
But noise, other thing, because if like my ears like that, the noise is there.
Yeah. Okay. That is called tinnitus or tinnitus, potato, potato. Okay. The hard thing about tinnitus is if you've got it, you've got it. It's like arthritis. Okay, we can't generally get rid of it. We don't know really what causes it. We do know oftentimes it is associated with hearing loss. Okay, so we'll find that out today. But more importantly, what we know we can do is hide it. And so oftentimes, if it's there, we can provide stimulation to ultimately hide.
Yeah, that's 24 hours a day.
Okay.
There's nothing stop when you go to sleep or
Right.
when you get up, or it continues.
Right.
And it's the same noise.
Yep. So that sounds to me like it's tinnitus. Okay. Now the thing, once again, a lot of times it's associated with hearing loss. So when I test you today, and if we find that there's a hearing loss, what we generally can say is that just by providing amplification, providing stimulation, we can hide that tinnitus. So we can make it less than what it occurs. That's putting the cart before the horse. Let's figure out what else is going on here. Okay. So basically, as I understand it, the general concern is we're both sort of feeling like, things aren't quite what they used to be, more in the case for you, Nick, than for you, Dottie. But that being said, it's enough to get you concerned enough to want to be tested and figure out exactly what's going on. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, it's the last couple of years, because even when you go to bed, you're laying bed and robe,
Right.
it's there.
Okay.
You woke up, it's there.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, where it is.
Well, let's do this. Let's start at the beginning here a little bit with Hearing Unlimited. Since you're both new to Hearing Unlimited, let me teach you a little bit about who we are as a company. Hearing Unlimited has been around since 1949. That means we're in our 66th year. For companies these days, that's a pretty impressive in our success to the fact that we focus very much on what we call a medical modeled approach to hearing health care. we're not a retail center, we're not a national corporation or a franchise. Basically, we're locally owned and operated, and we focus on the health ramifications of hearing loss, okay, both short and long term. And what we know is that by treating hearing loss, we can overcome many of those long-term, short-term consequences. So that's where we focus, and I think that sets us apart from a lot of our colleagues out and about. As for myself, I do what I do primarily to off and put it off. I was young and I could handle it, okay? But then I got married, and my wife wouldn't let me put up with it anymore, okay? And she basically had me start looking into it, and in the process of looking into it, I learned a lot about hearing loss and learned about those short and long-term consequences. And in truth, it scared me. So I decided to do something about it. But in the process of doing something about it, I liked it enough to make it a career. And so that's how I ended up doing what I do. But I think the most in my process isn't so much all of this. What I learned is how I wish I would have been treated in many instances, and how to go about, I think, more, and the connections between your ears and the brain. The easier it is that you're going to be able to make an informed decision about taking care of your own hearing. Okay, so education for me is critical. So today we're going to spend a little time on education. Okay. Secondly is testing. Education supports the testing, and I'm not going to make a single recommendation unless I have a test to back it up. Okay, I generally don't even like to talk about hearing aids until I have a reason to talk about it. Okay. And so we're going to test today. We're going to look at what's going on up there, and if we find something, then we'll tackle that. We'd hug and shoo you out the door and say, come back in a year, let's keep track of it.
That's
okay?
what I'm looking for.
Yeah, okay. So, what's important is testing, okay? Again, let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's let the testing do the talking. And then finally, treatment. If the test results show that there is a problem, I want to fix it. I want to treat the issue so that it doesn't become a worse problem later on down the road. Okay, so that's where I come from, and I wish I would have known a lot more of that when I was going through the process myself. But now that I'm on this side of the desk, I can implement that and hopefully make it easier for the patients that come and see me to
Now,
get
is
the help
this the
they
thing
need.
you sit in?
That's pretty much it. Okay.
Because I know when you go into them normally, there is also silent noise.
Yeah, and that's okay. So I will explain all of that. Basically, what it really is in a nutshell, when I test you, I'm going to double and triple check every measurement I take, because our patients have short-term memories, and their short-term memories like to remember that little beep, and so you hear phantom beeps and you push the button when you're not supposed to. So I just double and triple check every measurement I take. Okay, so
And then a lot of times you hear it and then I'm not sure about that.
And
And
so,
then you don't.
Yeah, no, I'm going to give you very clear instructions, so you'll be okay. All right. So what I'm thinking here is Nick, I'm not sure if an apology is in order, but I'm going to focus on you today because it seems like you're the one that believes that there's maybe a little bit more of an issue than not. Okay. So I'm going to focus more here. It really doesn't matter. I'm speaking to both of you. Okay. But I'm going to start with you and test you. Now, what will happen is given our schedule today, if I, working with Nick, run out of time and am not able to test you today, we'll get you back in and test you at our earliest convenience, okay? But because I want to be able to focus on those who need help, and looks like right now, because you checked yes there, I want to focus with you, Nick, okay? So is that okay? Is everybody okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay. Nick, you all right with that?
You?
That's fine.
Okay.
You
So
have that tinnitus or whatever.
yeah. So what I'm going to do
You
is
said your first name is
John.
Joe?
John. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So what I'm going to do real quick is easy. I'm assuming everything is the same between the two of you minus the name. Is that right?
That's it.
Yeah. So I'm just going to change Dorothy to Nick, and that way I can just do everything I need to do right here with you, Nick, and then if I have time, Dorothy, I'll just add you
Okay,
in.
then his contact is me.
Yep, so everything is there. Okay, so 122 Victoria Drive, okay, 412-896-5789, same numbers, okay. So we're good. We'll just focus here, Nick, with you. Now, Again, I'm not going to talk solely to you, Nick. It's going to be to both of you, okay? And the information is just as valid for you. Even if nobody has a hearing loss, the information is very important, okay? So what I'm going to do is just slide over here, and we're going to talk a little bit about testing, okay? All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about testing. And the hope here is that when you leave here, you have a very solid and firm understanding as to exactly what's been tested, why it's been tested, and ultimately what that testing represents, okay? So here in a couple minutes, Nick, I'm going to put you in my booth, okay? And I'm going to test two very specific things. The first thing I'm going to test processes information from the ear, okay? And that goes back to what I said earlier. If there's one to take home for me today, it is that you do not hear with your ears. You hear with the brain.
Right.
The ears are simply the mechanism to get information to the brain, okay? It's for processing and understanding. So in order to determine how well the ears are working, I have to measure the sounds that it's able to detect, okay? So in a couple minutes, I'm going to put you in the booth, and I'm going to create a graph. We call this graph an audiogram. And what the audiogram represents is the volume you need to hear specific sounds. We call those sounds frequencies, and we measure those frequencies in hertz, okay? That's really not important. All you need to know is the further to the left we go, the more bass the sound is, the more power-driven the sound is, okay? The further to the right we go, the more Mickey Mouse-esque the sound is, okay? So let's focus on that. Let's split that up and identify that a little bit better. 250, 500, and 1,000. Those all represent those low frequencies, okay? I like to call the low frequencies the power sounds, the strength in speech. More specifically, I like to call them the foundational tones, because every word has a foundation, and that foundation are your vowel sounds. A, E, I, O, and U, sometimes Y and W, but ultimately the low frequencies give power to sound in the form of that core, that vowel sound, okay? So I like to label this whole section as the power of speech, okay? Now what we're focusing on today is your ability to understand speech, the ability that you have to communicate. Now, that said, 30% of what you hear are those low frequency sounds, the power-driven parts of speech. The 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, everything in between represents the high frequencies, and the remaining 70% of what you hear. 70% of what you hear are clarity-driven sounds of distinction, the sharpness of sound. I like to call it the framework of sound, generally the beginning and ends of words. So the consonant sounds, the S, the SH, the T, the K, the V, the B, the P, etc. Okay? That is the clarity speech. Okay? Now I like to follow that up with an example. Okay? I like to give you the sound oi. Okay, Nick, oi has no meaning in the English language. Oi. Double vowel. As soon as I put a t in front of that, I've just given it meaning. Toy. Okay? I can change that t to a b without much effort. And now I've changed the meaning of the word. Boy. Two very similar sounding words, two very different meanings. And then with even less effort, I can tack a on the end of either one of those. So I've got boys and toys, singular and plural. It is very important that we hear both the core and those high-frequency, clarity-driven sounds. Okay? So what's going to happen is when I put you in my booth, I'm going to isolate you from the world a little bit so you can hear only what I pretty much want you to hear within reason. And I'm going to present to you some frequency-specific tones. And you're going to push a button when you hear those tones. What I'm looking for is the point at which you can't hear it. Okay? That's called your threshold. Okay? and we measure the threshold, in other words, how much volume you have to hear the sound, on a loudness scale. Obviously, the smaller the number, the quieter the sound, the higher the louder. Now, a common misconception on this graph is that 0 represents no volume. That's incorrect. 0 represents normal. So anything on this graph that comes in above 0 is better than average hearing. Anything that comes in below 0 is a hearing loss. Now, there is a range of hearing loss between 0 and 20 that we call the medically acceptable range of hearing loss. It's still a hearing loss. It's just acceptable from the standpoint that you fall within a range that most everybody is in and does not seem to struggle. Okay? So it's okay. Now, if we drop below 20 decibels, then we fall into a range that is called the needs, help, null region of hearing loss. Now, we're going to talk about that in just a second in greater detail. If it goes below 85, then we get into what's called the questionable area. It's not that we can't help, it's just harder to do so. At 110, 120 decibels, that's about the sound of a jet engine. Okay? So you can imagine if I'm trying to put the sound of a jet engine into somebody's ears, it's kind of hard to control that. So it's just harder to manage at that point. Okay? So again, it's not that we can't help, it's just harder to do. Now, if it's below 20, why is it so important? Why that needs help now range? That comes down to the anatomy of what's going on with our hearing. In a nutshell, what I'm testing right here is this organ right here. It's called the cochlea. The cochlea is sort of the antenna to the brain. Okay? Sound originates out here, comes flying down the ear canal, where it's ultimately conducted to the cochlea. The cochlea is filled with 30 to 40,000 tiny little hair cells that react to the vibrations of sound. And when they react, they stimulate a little nerve. Each one of those 30 to 40,000 hair cells is connected to its own nerve. All of those nerves come off the back of the cochlea and coalesce to become what's called the cochlear nerve, or the auditory nerve. Okay? And the auditory nerve heads off to the brain. Okay? Specifically to the Wernicke's area of the brain and the Broca's area of the brain, together called the auditory cortex. Okay? Basically, the reason you don't hear is because the cochlea has been damaged and it can't send the information to the brain, and if the information doesn't get to the brain, we don't hear it. Okay? Well, that's a problem, because if the nerve is not utilized, just as you said, Dottie, at the beginning, that nerve, from lack of stimulation, can be damaged, can atrophy and die. If that nerve atrophies and dies, it can't get information to the brain. And so over time, the brain too begins to atrophy and die. Okay? Now, we call that auditory deprivation. And some recent studies from Johns Hopkins has linked that. One, hearing loss is linked to accelerated brain tissue loss. That goes to support the idea that we're not using it and we're losing it. Okay? The brain is not being utilized, so it's literally losing. It's losing size. It's losing material. Additionally, what we found is that hearing aids may slow, or treating hearing loss may slow cognitive decline tied to hearing. Hearing loss affects memory. Okay? Now, what it all comes down to is because the information can't get to the brain, that system breaks down, which can ultimately lead to that higher risk of earlier onset Alzheimer's and dementia, which I think is listed there. Okay? We know that hearing loss is directly associated and linked to diabetes, to heart disease. We know that there's a higher degree of hospitalization with those with untreated hearing loss. But more importantly, we recognize that it dramatically affects the quality of life of the individuals affected.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Why would it have an impact on, for instance, diabetes?
Okay. The cause and effect isn't known. We just know there's a relationship between the two. So we can't say that hearing loss causes diabetes. We can't say that diabetes causes hearing loss. Now, they generally tend to think that that's the direction it goes, because hearing loss diabetes generally causes circulatory problems. Okay, and so because the ears aren't getting the circulation that they need, ultimately they start to fail. What we do know is that I believe it's something 2.5 times more likely to have hearing loss if you're diagnosed with diabetes. Okay, so there's just that relationship. Okay, and that brings up a very good point. I would never want any of my patients to think that, you know, if they have a hearing loss and they choose not to get help, that they're going to go home and get diabetes or go home and get dementia or something like that. Okay. What I want you to be aware of is the long-term consequences and relationships are there. And so if we can just take out one of those variables, we know that we can drastically improve some of the outcome of those relationships. Okay, and so that's what we focus on, and research tells hearing loss is treated mostly because the quality of life of the individual goes up, and so they're more active, they're more engaged, they're more likely to remain active from the standpoint of mental acuity and the like. Okay, so that was a very good question. Okay, so really the cause and effect relationships, that's really not known. We just know that they're linked. Okay, and so let's tackle what we can tackle. Okay, so the reason we need that help now is because if it's down significantly, if it's below that 20 decibel mark, we know at that point the information is not being processed by the brain as it should, and so we need to help it. Okay, and so that's what we're going to find out. That's what we're going to look into. Ton of information into your lap. If you have any questions, and Dottie, you too, because you heard it all just as well. Okay, any other questions that you guys have right off the bat?
No, I feel like they were.
Awesome. So Nick, we're going to.
To me, it puzzles me just the noise. So it puzzles me.
What it puzzles you?
Yeah.
The noise. Okay. So the best thing I can explain about the tinnitus, or that noise that you hear in your ears, is
it's not my ears. Everybody sees your ears. That's no, because I plug my ears, but the noise is still.
Okay. Now remember, what do you hear with? What did we just go over? Do you hear with your ears, or do you hear with your brain?
Oh, you said brain.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So even if I plug up the sound,
but it's one sound.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't change.
Yeah. Yeah. Now my sound, mine does the same thing, except for mine kind of comes and goes, but it's always the exact same pitch. It sounds like somebody turns on a whistle, kind of a train whistle.
Mine's like a pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're describing quintessentially you're describing tinnitus. Okay. And so what we know is that tinnitus originates somewhere between the cochlea and the brain. Something's amiss in there, and we think that basically because things are misfiring in there, because there's a hearing loss, the brain processes those misfires as a sound. Okay. The reality is we can't fix that. Okay, I cannot fix the damage to the cochlea. Okay, so if I find that there's damage there, I can't fix it. What I can do is help it. And by helping that system, we can ultimately then cover up that noise. Okay, or lessen it. I can't get rid of it. I can't cure it. Okay, but I can help it. Okay, more often than not. Okay, but the first thing we've got to do is figure out whether or not there's anything going on in there. Okay, so I'm going to take a peek inside your ear. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll look in yours as well. Okay, Donnie. So let's start with you first, Nick. Okay, here we go.
You hold your hand.
There we go. Now, Nick, do you use Q-tips?
I used to, but now for a while now, because I find out the Q-tip packs the
wax in there.
wax, yeah.
Okay.
I said now I just rinse them with a.
Very normal amount of earwax in both ears, but I can still see through the wax and see the eardrum. That tells me if I can see the eardrum, the sound can get through to the eardrum. Okay, so I don't suspect wax is much of an issue. There's some in there. Everybody has some. Okay, so I don't want you to worry too much about that. Now, If in fact the wax is impacting the sound, my test will tell me that, okay? And then I'll just tell you to go get it cleaned out and we'll retest you later, okay?
Okay.
All right. Dottie, you have a beautiful looking ear. Now, Dottie, have you had any pain in your ear recently, or any allergies that have been bothering you?
I have allergies.
Okay. Your eardrum's a little bit on the red side, so usually that's associated with allergies, especially this time of year. Okay. Not this one. This one looks great. Okay. This one's a little bit red, which means that you may have just picked up a slight, very moderate infection in that ear. Okay. So if you have any pain or discomfort in that right ear, recommendation is always just to see your family doctor. Okay.
Okay.
But it's both ears look very.
This is allergy season.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Okay. All right. So, Nick, we're going to start with you. We're going to go ahead and test you, okay, and go from there. Now, the neat thing here is Dottie, I'm going to have you pretty much come around and watch me test. Not because I don't think not because I think you don't trust me, but I want you to see how he progresses in real time, okay, as we do it, okay? So, Nick, let me see here. Let me get back here because I just changed some things. I'm going to... There we go. All right. So come on over here. I'm going to put you in the booth. Okay.
I'm in the chair around here.
That's fine. You just go ahead and slide around right next to me. Nick, you hop into my spaceship here. Okay. All right. Now, the first thing I'm going to give you, Nick, is this little button. Okay, this drives your spaceship. Okay, so the button on top is going to be key, and I'll give you instructions on when to push that in a second. Second thing I'm going to do is put this little headset on, and I'm going to give you a headset in just a second. So I'll put it on, and then just hang tight. Okay, so here we go. All right, now this booth, Dottie, more for you, is not completely soundproof. Okay. So we're going to want to keep any conversation down to a minimum, okay? But I will probably ask you some questions as we test, okay? Okay, Nick, now as I talk to you right now, if I were the TV or radio, would you turn me up, turn me down, or am I just right? Just right. Just right, okay, super duper. All right, now, what's going to happen is, well, let me explain to Dottie what she's looking at here first. Okay, so Dottie, what you see right here is exactly what I just explained over here. Okay, so furthest to the left we go, those are those power sounds. To the right we go, those are those clarity-driven sounds. Easiest way to explain this is I want his thresholds to be coming in as close to zero as possible. Okay, now, what's going to happen here, Nick, is I'm going to present you a tone. It's going to sound like a beep, 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 beep. Okay? Now, no matter how, as soon as you hear it. Okay? So just be 100% sure that you heard it before you hit the button. Okay? Now, what I would like you to do is go ahead and tap the button so I know that it's working. Perfect. So when he hears it, that'll light up. I know he's good. Okay? So here we go. I will start with, because you said that both ears were about the same, I'm going to go ahead and start with the right ear. Okay, so here we go. So what you can see is those high frequencies he's really struggling with. So that's probably why he has a tough time understanding you.
Right.
Okay. All right, so here we go, left ear. All right. What else do you notice at home about his hearing loss?
Just the fact that,
Okay. So Nick, now what we're going to do is we're going to put all of those tones together to in essence form a word. Okay, so you're going to hear the computer say something like, say the word dog in the headset, okay? I'm going to go ahead and start with we'll start with that right ear of yours, okay? Then we'll go to the left ear. Now, if I need to, I'll put both ears together, but what I need you is when it begins, it's going to start out a little on the loud side. That's very normal, okay? If it's uncomfortable, though, just let me know. Say, whoa, that's too loud, okay? And I'll fix it, all right? Now, from the standpoint of what Donnie's looking at, once again, what's going to happen here is you're going to see a word flash up on the screen. That's the word he hears in the headset, okay? If he repeats the correct word, I give him a pretty blue check mark, okay? And that'll be in a column on this side. If he gets it wrong, he gets an ugly red X, okay? And if he gets that X, basically everything is going to be tallied right down here, okay? All righty, so here we go. Right ear first.
Say that word again. Say that word again.
Okay, and you don't have to repeat the say the word part, just repeat the last word, okay?
Okay.
Just say the word.
Yeah.
Wait. Again. Again. Then. Left. Right.
Good. Okay. One more test. All right, we have one more test. Okay. Now, we're going to take this headset off. Okay. And we're going to put this headset on. Now, I apologize in advance. This headset is tight, and it's going to feel crooked. Okay. And I'm going to put this back here behind your. Okay. That's fine. All right. Now, the same rules apply. You're going to hear that beeping sound. Okay. Don't worry about which ear you hear it in. Anytime you hear the beep, push that button. Okay, here we go. Now, this is a medical test. This tells me whether or not the wax is impacting anything.
Okay.
Okay. So, the important thing here is that he does have a significant hearing loss. Okay, we're going to talk to him about that. What basically is he's just going to need some support. He's got tough hearing loss, and as I explain it, you'll understand why. But it's still a significant loss, and we do need to look at it. Okay, so I'll get him out. I'm going to get the results, and we'll go over everything. Okay, so go ahead and have a seat. Have you ever seen it done by kind of a third party like that?
No, I have not.
Now, when you had your test last time, did they do a decent job explaining it to you that you remember, or?
If I remember correct, wasn't.
Not as much detail.
Not in detail.
All right. Well, let me grab your results, and I'll be right back. So,
Okay.
Di, I'm just going to make sure I can get past you here.
Oh, sure.
There we go. All right.
It's interesting to watch
Oh, yeah?
it. When I get mine, you'll have to,
Watch over there.
yeah, because and he keeps trying to see if it will improve if you miss seeing something or hearing something.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and leave the door open once so we can get some better air circulation here. We're here alone, so I'm okay with that, if you're okay with that.
Oh, that's
Okay?
fine.
So,
I heard somebody before.
yeah, the cleaning folks were in. If they come back, we'll shut the doors here.
Oh, no,
Okay?
no problem, I don't care.
So, Nick, you do have a significant hearing loss, okay? And I let Donnie know just as I walked out. But my big question for you really is, as I look at your hearing loss, is there, okay, any reason?
Denial, is that right? Denial.
Well, I don't know if it's denial,
we're
no,
all, I think we're all guilty of that.
I'd sort of say a vast
I can
majority
hear
of
the
my patients.
TV, I can hear them on the phone, I can hear, conversation, I can hear when I'm out with the people.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, and you're not alone, okay? The vast majority of the folks that come into my office look at me, and when I ask them that question, why haven't you done anything about this sooner, the response is oftentimes, well, I didn't notice it. I don't realize it's there, okay? And that's because hearing loss is so, like the word I used earlier, it's just so insidious. We are the last people to know it's there, okay? So what I want to do is I want to copy this information over to here so you have some perspective, okay? So first things first, let's put this division between the lows and the highs, okay? Low frequencies and high frequencies, okay? Remember that the lows are the vowel sounds, A, E, I, O, U, etc., okay? And those are the power sounds, power of, okay? Your high frequencies give those detail-oriented parts of sound, the clarity, so the S, the SH, the T, the K, the V, the B, the P, etc. Okay, so that's the clarity of speech. Okay? Now, let's look at volume. Remember that 0 is normal. Okay? It does not mean no volume, it's normal. 20 is that cutoff for what is acceptable. Okay? Now, what's going on here is, this is the key here, your X's are the left ear, the O's are the right ear. Okay? Your low frequencies are pretty darn good. Okay? They're probably as good as they were the day you graduated high school, or the equivalent, or got married. Okay? In the end, your lows are really good. Okay? But your highs are not. You are missing all of this, okay?
And that's like the ladies.
That's clarity-driven
I
sound.
remember when Ronnie got his, and they said to Barb, he can't hear you.
Yeah, okay. That would be women's voices, children's voices. More importantly, let's put you in noise, okay? I'm willing to bet that there are many times where you sit and think to yourself, people mumble a lot more than they used to. Or people talk faster than they used to. You probably have expressed that at certain points in time. Well, the reality is it's pretty safe to assume that the whole world has not changed around us, but our perception of the world has slowly changed. You do not have the distinction between words, okay, as well as you should. So what happens is the brain is working overtime to try to fill in the gaps. And when it doesn't have enough information to do that, it sounds like people mumble, because you're not getting the beginning and ends of words. It sounds like people are talking really fast because there isn't distinction between each word. Okay? The prime example of that type of situation would be like at a restaurant. Okay? You're sitting at a restaurant, it's a little bit noisy. Background noise is low frequency. Okay? Background noise you hear wonderfully naturally. But the problem is it covers up, those power sounds cover up the clarity. So when the waitress walks up and says, "May I take your order, please?" you don't necessarily hear each word. You don't hear her distinctly. And so you look up and say, "What was that, my dear?" And she repeats it for you. Okay? Because you're getting covered up by the background noise and you're missing all of her clarity. That, and she's a woman, so she's got a higher pitched voice. Okay? So what's happening is your brain is not receiving that information as well as it should. Now, what's really good is that if I give you sufficient information, so if I give the brain enough stimulation, the pathways still work. Okay, and we tested that. I tested each ear independent of the other, and at 60 decibels, you got 93% of the words correct. That means you missed one word out of it, but it was wrong. Okay? Now, to give you some kind of perspective
I
there.
recall he was saying a word that wasn't up on the
Yeah,
screen.
so he said,
And I thought maybe it just didn't show up because it was a totally different word that came up.
That's exactly right. So what happens is you might have heard bell and you heard well. Okay? So the sound came in bell, but your brain processed well, so you repeated well. You heard something, but you heard it wrong. The brain didn't have enough information to really figure out what the word was supposed to be. Okay? Now,
Well, I thought that was kind of like a blip in...
No, that was him hearing incorrectly. Now, that was at 60 decibels. Let's assume for a second that Dottie has normal hearing. Okay? She would hear very comfortably 100% at about 35 decibels. For you to get 93%, I had to take you to 60 decibels. Okay? So, what we found was in a nice, quiet, pristine environment, if I give the brain enough stimulation, it's going to pick up on the vast majority of sound. But we also know that you're missing and require a significant amount of volume. Remember, 85 is that cutoff for what is profound. And you're hugging it with your right ear. Okay? So we're missing a lot of that sound to give distinction in words. You got the power. No problem. Guy like me, you're not going to have any problems with me. Okay? I spent most of my college career feeling like I was going to be in radio, so I practiced my radio voice. Okay? So I've learned to talk with distinction. I've learned to enunciate well.
Do you wear a hearing aid?
I do. They're there. Okay? They're back there.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. So basically, though we know that there's damage, though we know that the cochlea doesn't respond as it should to those high frequency sounds, and because and though we know that the brain can process information, what I really don't know is how well you do in a normal everyday situation. Okay, I had you locked in a box there, Nick. And you don't listen to most conversations locked in a soundproof box. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to test you. I want to expand my testing out a little bit to see if this does impact you in a nice, normal, conversational setting in an everyday, real-world type of environment. So what we're going to, this is where you get to play. Okay? This is where you're going to come in. I'm going to put Dottie at about 6 to 8 feet from you. Okay, actually I'll have you sit in my chair over here and she can stay where she's at. But she's going to read you a list of words. And all you have to do is repeat the word that you hear. Okay? So come on over here.
And how loud do you want me?
We're going to talk like you talk to them at home. Okay? So you sit right here. Okay? Within reason, we'll say. Okay? So let me grab my list of words here. Now, there are some rules, Nick, to this test. Okay? First and foremost, I'm going to hold the list. But when I hold it, I'm going to cover up her face.
Right.
Okay? Because I don't want you reading any lips. Okay? I want you to
read lips.
You'd be super surprised. Okay? But I want to limit that visual cues, that visual help. I want the ears to do all the work. Okay?
All right.
So if you get the word right, we'll just move on. Okay? If you get it wrong, I'm going to do this. That's your cue that you got the word wrong. Now, when I do that, I really want you to be thinking about something. First and foremost, I dropped it. That means it's wrong.
Yeah.
But I also want you to realize that you heard something. You just heard it wrong. Okay? That's important to recognize because those of us with hearing loss don't realize that we hear things, we just hear it wrong. And that's what impacts us. Okay? So when I drop it, that's your cue that, okay, I heard something, but I heard it wrong. Then I'll have you give it again until you get it right. Okay? Now, we're going to talk in a normal conversational tone. This is about the average distance for this size of a room. We've got we've got ambient noises. We've got a pipe that drains water every now and then. So we've got some good, realistic kind of ambient noises. Okay? So here we go. We're going to start with this list. Okay?
Elf.
Elf.
Okay, give that again.
Elf.
Elf.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought you said.
Yep.
Corpse.
Corpse.
Good.
Carve.
Carve.
Clasp.
Clasp.
Do that one again.
Flash.
No. Clasp.
Oh, clasp. Okay.
Fifth.
Fifth.
Good.
Knees.
Knee.
Do that again.
Knees.
Oh, knees. Okay.
Pew.
Say Q or pew?
Pew.
Pew, okay.
I'll give it to you. Okay, I'll put a question mark on it.
Thin.
Say that again?
Thin.
Thin, okay.
Ease.
Ease.
Sin.
Sin.
Say that one more time.
Sin.
As in,
That's his
yep, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. I just wanted to verify. I was trying to hear if you put a G on the end of that or not.
No.
Okay. So here's my concern. Okay. Going over that. Okay. You missed between 4 and 5 words. Okay. I'm going to give you pew, but you also heard Q. You were hesitant on that. Okay. So what that tells me is between 50 and 60% correct. Okay. You missed 4 or 5 words. Now what that tells me, Nick, is in a nice quiet environment, in a world and in a situation just like this one, with a voice you're very familiar with, you're missing between 30, 40, and 50% of what's going on around you. Okay? Now you cannot tell me that does not impact you every single day of your life. Okay. Well, I'm not going to move on from here until we have that recognition. Okay. What's important to recognize here, okay, is that the brain is able to fill in the gaps. Okay. A lot of people look at me and say, this is an unfair test because nobody has a conversation in one-word increments. That's true. But if I were to put this into context, so give these words in a sentence, you would do very well. But that's not testing your hearing, that's testing your cognitive skills. Okay? Let me explain why. Finish my sentence. Just fill in the last word. Billy wants to go outside and bounce his brand new red.
Brand new red.
What's the last word of the sentence? So I want you to fill in. I'm not going to say the last word. I just want you to fill it in. So Billy wants to go outside and bounce his brand new red
car.
Okay. How about he wants to bounce his brand new red ball?
Because you wouldn't bounce a car.
Yeah, you wouldn't bounce a car. Okay. The brain has the ability to fill in. Okay. It knows where we're going, and so it doesn't need to hear it. That's an amazing feature. Not a lot of people really think that's all that amazing, but it's really amazing. Nothing has to be said, but the brain will process the information. Additionally, the brain can fix things. For example, let's all get together for a Thanksgiving feast. Okay, that's wrong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It should be feast. Okay?
Yeah.
Well, your brain doesn't need to know that, because it knows where I'm going with the sentence. And so in the course of conversation, if I were to have said beast, you don't even think about it. You just go straight on through it. Okay? Now, over time, what happens is because of the hearing loss, the brain loses the ability to fill in the gaps and fix the problems. And so you hear, hey, everybody, let's get together and have a Thanksgiving feast. And the response out of you is what do you mean, we're having a giant turkey? No, we're just getting together for dinner. Well, what's this beast you're talking about? I didn't say beast. You did too. You said beast. And that conversation occurs. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes it's laughable. But other times it's outright embarrassing. Okay? What I see here is that you're missing between 40 and 50% of what Dottie's saying at home. And that can become very permanent. And so again, I ask is you really can't look me in the eye and say that you don't notice this. Because I know right now from this test that you do.
Well, because right here, the explanation is right there. I will, at home, say something, okay, you don't think after that.
Right.
It went by.
Okay, help me understand what you mean by that.
Okay, now I missed the words because, and then that book up there explains what was supposed to be instead of what you all said. But if he sees I'm watching TV and sees in the kitchen up there and says something because I'm paying attention to a TV, I might hear part of it
Okay.
Or all of it.
Okay. Absolutely. Certainly. There's a part of that. So you're in one room doing one thing, but then and she tries to start a conversation with you, and you don't really tune into her until about halfway through the conversation.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. Okay. What I'm saying is the likelihood is you miss more in that situation than you do with what we just did. Okay. And what we just did, you're missing 40 to 50% of what's going on around you. So in a controlled environment, I mean, it still isn't home. It's still a semi-controlled environment. But in a controlled environment, I know your possibility is 93%. Your maximum capability is 93%. I tested that in the booth in an isolated setting. In a less controlled but still controllable situation, to 50 to 60%. That's telling me you're missing parts of sound that can help you to understand the world around you. Okay? That's the problem. Okay? And I want to help you with that. I want to test to see if I can improve upon that. But I need you to recognize that this is a legitimate and real problem.
Well, I realized, yeah, I'm here now. Realize what happened.
Okay.
Yes.
And so what I need you to recognize is that when I ask the question, do you notice this at home? Do you notice that this affects you as you understand and hear the world around you? I need you to recognize that. Because if you don't recognize it, it makes it very difficult for me to help you. Okay? Because you're going to go home and say, I hear just as well as this and that and the other. I need you to recognize that, you know what, John, I do notice this at home. If I really think about it, I struggle to hear Dottie in certain situations. When I'm in a noisy environment, I really don't hear very well, okay, or as well as I think I ought to, okay. I need you to recognize that. And so, again, I guess the question is...
Yeah, I mean, up to this point, I was never, let's put it this way, I was never, somebody explained to me, hey,
okay,
look what happened.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. And so now with that information, with the information that we just provided and with the testing that we have under our belt thus far, can you see how it affects you at home?
Yeah, I can see
Good.
that.
Okay.
Okay, then John, when I'm being tested and he gives me the words, and it might be a little bit there too, because of his accent.
Yeah, and that's certainly part of it, okay?
And
but what's beautiful about that is me. Okay, I'm sitting here and I am the mediator. Okay, so what will happen is yeah, that's right. Okay, so for example, I have patients that misread words all the time. Chief, for example, in one of these lists. I think it was the list that we had. Okay, now it's down here. Either way, I have a ton of people that say chef. Okay, I'm here. I hear you say chef. And so if he repeats the word chef, not the word that's on the list, that's okay.
Right.
So if you give him, just like sin, okay, I thought he was saying sing, okay, but you were saying sing, which is that hard kind of E for the I with your accent. Well, that's okay, okay. I will hear that and I will put that down, okay. I know what we're hearing, okay. So right now, focusing on you, what I want to do at this point is, normally what I would do is put noise into the mix and repeat the test. But I don't need to know that you're going to do worse than 50 to 60%. Okay? You're already missing more than a third to half of what's going on around you. So what I want to do is I want to see if we can improve upon it, if we can make sound more comfortable. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a pair of hearing aids for you. And we're going to put them in your ears, and we're going to repeat the test that we just did. Different words, but same situation. Nothing's changed, just different words. Okay? So hang tight for a second. Now, Nick, are you first generation here in the States?
Yes.
Yes. Fun. I spent 2 years in Brazil, and it was a lot of fun to go down there and spend that time there. But I didn't make it a permanent move, so I'm sure it's a little bit different. But
yeah, he came here when he was 19.
19. What brought you here?
Well, it was also the war in Greece.
Okay.
Nothing there.
Nothing there, yeah, well, that'll about do it, yeah. Okay. All
Now,
right.
on your hearing aids, do you give like a 30-day trial, or how do you?
In essence, and I'm going to explain that, again, we're still we know that we can help, but the bigger question is whether or not the hearing aids are actually going to help. Okay, some people I put hearing aids in and it doesn't help. Even though they've got a hearing loss, even though I know I'm giving them the appropriate sound to counteract the hearing loss, some people just don't respond to the hearing aids. And so until I absolutely know that hearing aids are the appropriate route,